Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the Alzheimer Society of Ireland pre-budget submission. My name is Kevin Quaid, and I have Lewy body dementia, and I'm a member of the Irish Dementia Working Group, and I will be your MC for this morning. We're coming together to speak about what people living with dementia and their family needs from the upcoming budget 2021. We've heard a lot about how we're all in this together as the country navigates COVID-19. But let me tell you, people affected by dementia feel forgotten. And I know because I'm one of them. There is a crisis happening right now as family carers and people living with dementia try to survive without the supports they had before COVID-19. And before COVID-19, that was a struggle. I want to acknowledge the people with dementia and family carers who cannot be here. People whose dementia has advanced, or people who are so busy caring, they do not even get time out. We think of them throughout our work, and we stand in solidarity with them. Now, please use the chat box to say who you are and put any comments or questions to the speakers. I'll be keeping an eye on it. Now, before we start, we would love to get a picture of everyone to mark this occasion, our first virtual launch. So if you would like to be in the picture, please put your cameras on, straighten your ties, comb the hair, and smile.
Hi, Kevin. Good morning.
Yeah.
Kevin, I think that's good. I think I got
good stuff.
There's a lot in there. There's a lot of people there.
Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Now we have a number of speakers today, and I'm running a tight ship. We are grateful to all of you for taking the time to attend, and I will ensure our speakers stick to their allotted time. Can you see the big clock behind me? That's not there for fun. So look, I'm as good as Claire Burden, coming to you live from my shed in Kenturk. Now, I know it's obvious that I'm that bit better looking, but I mean, what can I do? I'm just so modest. And I have the help of my assistant, Claudia, from the Alzheimer Society, keeping an eye on time and all the technical issues. So if anything goes wrong, it's Claudia's fault, not mine. I am now going to hand you over to Eugene McKay, board member of the Alzheimer Society of Ireland, to say a few words of welcome. So good morning, Eugene.
Good morning, Kevin, and thank you. Thank you very much for introducing me. And on behalf of the board of the Alzheimer Society of Ireland, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this very important event in our calendar. It's the first time that we've been hosting our pre-budget submission virtually. Normally, we look forward to meeting you all in person and enjoying the hospitality of Buswell's Hotel. Although we may not be meeting physically together, it's all the more critical that we work together to improve the lives of those affected by dementia. There is no doubt that this budget will be like no other. This year, ASI is calling on the government to invest just under 20 million euro, 19.667 million euro to be exact, in urgent infrastructure and community supports for people affected by dementia. This request is both critical and essential in view of the profoundly detrimental impact COVID-19 is having on people living with dementia and their family caregivers. The continued absence of vital services and the growing gap between services needs and delivery has led to forgotten crisis in dementia care. I'm going to take a moment to mention a number of the things we know about the impact of COVID-19 in the context of dementia. Living with dementia at any time brings everyday challenges for the person and those around them. The challenges from the impact of COVID-19 have made daily life considerably more difficult. A recent research report conducted by ASI over the summer period uncovered the extent of the plight and predicament facing people living with dementia and those who support them. It found they are struggling to cope with increased workloads and decreased supports. Stress, exhaustion, loneliness, and anxiety have intensified as many COVID-19 restrictions imposed on dementia services continued and with no end in sight. Many fear they have been forgotten and abandoned. Against that backdrop, ASI was very pleased to note that the current programme for government commits to implementing the National Dementia Strategy, which was developed, and I quote, to improve dementia care so that people with dementia can live well for as long as possible. This gives us all hope here at ASI that the government recognises their role and their responsibility in addressing the enormous tasks we have ahead. I can assure you today that ASI will work with anyone who wants to see this commitment realised. We claim no exclusivity whatsoever on the services and support required. Our only ambition as an organisation is to see those services and supports delivered where they are needed, irrespective of who provides them. In concluding, I thank you for your presence and support today. It gives us great encouragement to continue our work advocating for those affected by dementia. Before I hand the virtual controls back to Kevin, I'd like to end with the voice of a family carer giving a brief insight into the impact of COVID-19 on their lives.
It's worrying. It's lonely. The monotony of continually having to repeat that we can't go shopping, driving, etc. I'm locked down with no idea as to when I can have a day off, no daycare, no respite, and no idea as to when it'll resume. I feel alone.
Thank you, Eugene. Wow, what an impactful quote that was there at the end. It can be hard to listen to, can't it? Next, I would like to welcome Pat McLaughlin, CEO of the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland, who will explain what the Alzheimer's Society is calling for in this budget submission. Now, remember to put your questions for Pat in the chat box, and I will put to him after he has finished speaking. Good morning, Pat.
Morning, Kevin, and good morning, everybody. First of all, I suppose I'd like to thank the TDs and senators in particular. 92 of you signed our pledge, which we asked before the budget, or before the election, and we're absolutely delighted with that. And I've no doubt that that is the reason that the programme for government does have a number of the issues that we look for included in the programme. But we do need to do more, and we need to make sure that that programme is front-loaded. I had the opportunity to read the winter plan yesterday, which was published by the HSE, and it is very impressive. And I suppose when I heard Paul Reid saying that this is likely to be the most challenging winter in living memory, it did send shivers down my spine, because for carers and people with dementia, they have just gone through the most challenging summer in living memory. Since the middle of March, all of the services that were face-to-face, other than home care, in effect have had to be. But daycare, we have not been able to open any of those services today. That's 1,100 people who are receiving at least one day, some people making 2 days a week, were able to access that service. It also doesn't include 500 people who had chosen to list themselves as being available for service. That's the context for today. I think it's also important that we outline that this is not just government, that it's important that people realise that social distancing has a direct impact with dementia and their carers. There is an ongoing reason why we cannot reopen our day centres and why nursing homes are now restricting. And that is because of COVID, spread of COVID. So people might not realise the impact of their behaviours. Social distancing and these issues have a direct impact on the most vulnerable, and we believe people with dementia. We've had an opportunity to review the winter plan, and I will start off with the positives. We are absolutely delighted to see a commitment to home care and to home first. extremely important. And what's equally important is that there's a commitment to immediately establish the single assessment tool so that we can actually deal with the needs that people have rather than saying you are getting a half an hour care or an hour's care from a home help. That's absolutely welcome. But I also say thanks to Minister Mary Butler for approving the dementia advisors. And number 10 dementia advisors were announced by Minister Harris, and that has now been delivered on by Minister Mary Butler, and we're absolutely delighted with that. We do need more, and we've outlined that in our submission, but we want to thank the Minister and the Department and the agency. That happened because of all of us working together with the press later. So those are the two positives. When I look at the situation in relation to capital, and it's not usual for us to talk about capital in our budget, but we do need capital badly. And the easiest way to discuss this and to outline the crisis that we have is probably to take the situation that faced us and faced the country when Laois, Offaly and Kildare had restrictions. Where were we in that situation? Well, in Laois, we don't have a day centre. There's day centres in Ireland for 30 years in other counties. We don't even have a day centre there. In Offaly, we have a day centre operating for a few days a week, closed since March. And in relation to Kildare, I'm with the Society almost 4 years. In that space of time, our daycare centre moved from a premises that a voluntary body gave to us, which they then needed back, to a private organisation that we had to rent for, or we had to leave because of an extravagant rent request on review. And then subsequently to a nursing home that gave us space, but we had to exit that nursing home because we were considered visitors before the rest of our situation that we face now in those three counties. So we need to get our centres back up. It's clear that only about a third of them are fit for purpose. And it's no accident that those are the places that were purpose-built, sufficiently large to do this. Whatever that fund is, it's going to be needed to do refurbishments, extensions, probably new build, modular development. I'm speaking here with evidence from our own society, but I know that our colleagues who are dementia providers, Western Alzheimer's, St. Joseph's, Carebright, have all the same issues. We're not saying we need to provide all of these directly ourselves. We're saying this is the evidence that we're looking at that we can stand over. So that's the situation in relation to refurbishment and new build. We're also looking for key workers. This was promised in the dementia strategy. Absolutely needed, proven in other countries as benefit. We're looking for dementia inclusive coordinators. We have seen the benefit of the Understand Together, the community champions, but it does need to be resourced so that the various organisations can be coordinated and that we can ensure that people continue to live in the community. So as a collective, we have shown with yourselves, we have made progress on home care, we've made progress on dementia advisors. But I have to say in relation to most of the other issues over the past decade, either we have failed to convince you as politicians, or you have failed to convince the government and the HSE. And I don't want to dwell on the past, but what I do know is that whenever lockdown comes to a county, there's an immediate decision by the Cabinet to provide resources, provide capital, provide start-up grants, etc. So I would say there should be no delay in going to the Cabinet and set up a fund and be accessed so that we can operate and get our services back and plan to get them back. We accept that in the current situation, many of our services won't be able to open because of the trajectory of the virus. No point in 2 months' time if that situation changes. We're looking at situations where our premises are not suitable. So I would say to politicians from all parties, please work together, identify the issues in your own local community and work with us. But above all, convince the Cabinet that it's important to set up an emergency fund that needs to deal with the situation. So I want to thank everybody for attending. Normally I'd be thanking Boswells, or in many situations I'm thanking priests for the use of the hall. So I don't know who owns the cloud, but I'm thanking whoever provided the cloud and keeping this broadcast going. So thank you all very much, and thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Pat. Now, I know that I have a question for you, so I just need to scroll up through the box here, because a lot of people are agreeing with what you have said. And as usual, oh yes, question. We have a question for Pat from Deputy Martin Brown. What is the main difficulty preventing community-based care for people with dementia? Is it a lack of support such as home help, or are there other issues, Pat? And that's from Deputy Martin Brown. You're muted, Pat.
I've unmuted myself. Okay. Thanks, Deputy. I think that's very clear to us in the Alzheimer Society, is that from the very beginning, people need information, they need advice. As the trajectory of dementia goes forward, they may need access to other supports and services. It could be counselling, it could be access to family care or training if it's a carer. But when it comes to the more progressive end of the condition, then we are talking about home care and we're talking about daycare. The home care to date has not been sufficient. We have to say that, and we have looked for that, and we are happy to see that continue in the announcement in the winter. That has to be kept going right through the year. We're in a situation that 80% of people attending our 47 day centres would only get 1 or 2 days of service. That wouldn't be acceptable for any other condition. But right now, if the government said to us, you can reopen your day service, we actually could open only about the facilities. There may be in community halls, they may be in other buildings that we've rented, leased, or simply were not designed for this. We're probably, in some of our buildings, will only be able to get about 30% of care. So that's the situation that we face. But we do need wraparound supports, like dementia advisors, like key workers. We need to be part of a multidisciplinary team with the HS. We can't just do this in a standalone way. We need dementia care partners in our acute hospitals. Only 6% of hospitals in Ireland, this was published last week or a week or two ago, only 6% of a dementia care pathway. That hasn't changed since 2014. That gives an indication of the lack of commitment. It does need bricks and mortar. That needs a change. We can't do that. That has to be done, and people need to see that it needs to be done within that particular area of care.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks so much. And thanks for everything you do for people like me and for being in our corner. Now, our next speaker this morning is Denise Monaghan, whose dad, Seamus, is living with dementia. This is a family disease. Our well-being and that of our family carers is linked and linked tight. If our carers do not get the support they need, then that has an impact on the complete family. I would like to welcome Denise now in conversation with Cormac Cahill, and Cormac is the Communications Manager of the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland. So good morning, Denise and Cormac, and again, if you have some questions for Denise or Cormac, you might put them in the chat box. Thanks. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Thanks for that lovely, hi Kevin, thanks for that lovely introduction there. Firstly, Denise, for people who maybe don't know your dad, would you like to tell us something about him? He's a very sociable fellow, very outgoing.
He was, yes, he was. He just loves being with people. It was just it gave him such a buzz to be with people, face to face, having banter. He worked in hospitality since he was 14. So he was just used to being around people, making sure people were okay, that everything was going well for them. Of course, I'm going to say he's an absolute gentleman, and he really is. He's such he's not at all imposing, or he's not at all presumptuous. He's just an absolute gentleman. very happy, jolly man he used to be.
Okay. And your dad has attended our Rose Cottage Daycare Centre now for over 7.5 years. Obviously great for him, and he's very much the life and soul of the place, I believe.
Yeah, he was. We were very, very lucky when within about a month of him being diagnosed 8 years ago, we fell in with Rose Cottage Services through the Alzheimer Society of Ireland, and so our journey has been together for 8 years with yourselves, and Rose Cottage was just great for him. It was just, he went 3 days a week, and it was just exactly what he needed. It was like home from home. He was on an interview panel down there for up to when his Alzheimer's progressed a little bit. He was the service users representative, and he used to be the one who'd settle in the new people and show them the ropes, sit beside them, make sure that they knew what the routine was. It was like a second home for him. I remember one time he went out to pick out bricks for the garden, which caused awful trouble at home because he never picked out bricks for my mother. And yet he was doing it here. But so comfortable was he down there that it felt like his other place to be.
Sure, of course. And like, given that he's a very outgoing person that you've just described there, you might talk us through how challenging the last 6 months have been for Seamus. I mean, does he know what has been going on?
No, he hasn't a clue. He at the early stage when the schools closed, he thought some child in one school had a virus, and so the school had to close. And he didn't get that this was nationwide. He didn't get the social distancing, the fact that places were closed, and still has no idea. He would still say to me daily, what are they talking about there on the news? What do those numbers mean? Why is there 2 meters all around the place? What's all that about? He thinks people are wearing masks because you must have a cough or a cold and you don't want to pass it on. So he has no concept of the pandemic and how serious it is and what we have to do to keep ourselves safe within this. So I can't bring him out. Certainly couldn't go for a coffee because he'd be doing his own usual thing and running after people to have a chat with them. And I can't put that on other people, and I can't put that on himself because he pulls down the mask to have the chat. So defeats the purpose. So no, it's been really, really tough 6 months. He doesn't recognize my brothers, which for me is the most heartbreaking thing, because Dad would have been a real family man. You know, I'm very, very proud of us, the 7 of us. He doesn't know, and when he sees a car pulling up and I'd say to him, or here comes Carl or whatever, who? And I just say to him now, oh, it's my brother. Oh, right, okay, your brother is coming. And when he's gone, sometime he will say, God, he's very nice, isn't he? He's a nice guy. So there's something nice there about knowing your father likes you for your own sake rather than being your father. But it's very hurtful, I think, to see the panic in his eyes when the car pulls up and he doesn't know who it is and what are they coming in for and do I have to talk to them? And that's really, really difficult for us to cope with.
Okay. I mean, people watching today would probably like to know, Denise, what have the last 6 months been for you as well as Seamus's carer?
It's been really, really tough. Very, very tough emotionally to watch his decline pretty much week on week. There's something new every week that he's just not getting, and he's slipping further and further away from us. And I really, really struggle with that because we had 7.5 years before COVID hit of, you know, it was a decline, but we could cope with it, if you know what I mean. We knew we had our bad days and you just get by them. But I actually think now we are in free fall. We are really hurtling towards something, you know, and the speed of the decline in the last 6 months, I could never have prepared for this. Nothing anybody would have said would have prepared me for this.
Okay. I mean, places like your dad's beloved Rose Cottage, the daycare centre you described are so well. They're obviously so important in communities right across the country. But it's been closed now for 6 months. I mean, does Seamus remember going there? Is he looking forward to going back someday?
He doesn't remember it at all, Cormac. That's what's so sad about all this. Like, it was a second home. He was so welcome there. He knew the routine. He would almost be waiting at the gate for the bus that used to come to collect him at 9:45. He'd be standing there waiting. It was just somewhere he was excited to go to. And it's really sad now that he has absolutely zero memory of that, and the people down there who meant so much to him and who were so very kind to him. You know, they're just amazing staff down there. And I've been down a good few times myself, and it's like a big living room with a table in the middle, and you have tea, coffee, scones and sandwiches at lunchtime, and it's like going to visit your friends. It was such a sociable thing to do, which fitted so well with him, that face-to-face thing. They'd have music playing and activities to do, and it's just vital for the community. It really is, to have somewhere like that right in the middle of where we can access it easily, you know.
Sure. And I think the last time we spoke here, Denise, was actually on a research webinar. It was around July. I mean, how has Seamus been since then? That was a little over 2 months ago.
He's declined even further since then, unfortunately. The aggression and the agitation became where we just couldn't. We had to go back to the GP, and unfortunately, and we've battled this for 7.5 years, nearly 8 years, we had to put another medication into the mix, for his sake, really, because he was like wound up 24/7. And we really avoided that. He was only ever on 2 medications from the very get-go. And now we've had to put a third one into the mix. And there's no doubt in my mind that that third one is because of COVID, because of where we are now. No doubt.
I mean, the name of our campaign is The Forgotten Crisis. I mean, how do you feel about this, Denise? I mean, do you feel like people like you, like your dad, really have been forgotten in the past 6 months?
Without a doubt. Definitely we have been forgotten about. My take on it, Cormac, is that my dad doesn't generate money. He costs money. And that's what this, for me, is about. Let's put him over there while we get our marketing back up and going again. And that's really unfair. My dad, who gave his all to the state since he was 14, does not deserve to be put to one side. And I will make sure that does not happen, that he will not be put to one side at this time in his life, when he needs a very basic service, a face-to-face service. You know, I will fight this every step of the way to get him what he needs. It can be done. I've absolutely no doubt it can be done. If I can go into a large supermarket wearing my mask, and there's 100 people there, and they can come this close while they're reaching in for the milk or the bread or whatever it might be, he can go to a service with and sit, you know, feet apart if he sees everyone else doing it. It can be managed. I'm very angry about it, you might have guessed.
I mean, you've just mentioned there, Denise, that obviously the face-to-face service for Seamus has been closed now for 6 months. I mean, that's been during, you know, good weather, spring into summer. Now that we're going into autumn and winter, I mean, you know, in terms of the dark evenings and dark nights and so on, I mean, do you think about things like that? I mean, will all this be harder going into the winter?
Without a doubt, it's going to be really difficult, because whatever now about the brighter mornings, the brighter evenings, once they both start closing in, and the hours of daylight are going to be less and less, I really worry about closing the curtains at 4:30. That shuts down his day for him at that time. That's crazy. The lights will probably be on all day. That's going to confuse him as well. You know, is it lunchtime or is it bedtime? You know, that kind of thing. Already he struggles with time within the day, whether it's morning, noon, or dinner time. He struggles with that. So, look, Cormac, I just want leadership on this. I just want someone to, where are the leaders? Who is shouting for this apart from ourselves? We absolutely need our country's leaders to take this by the neck and run with it.
Of course. Denise, I'm just going to turn to the chat box now. We've lots of nice messages coming in for you. I've a couple of questions that I see that have come in so far. One from Maura and Dial here. She says that we've seen over the past few months the government prioritise the reopening of schools, restaurants, pubs, and even people spending sporting events. As a fellow family carer, do you feel that we're at the back of the queue in terms of government priorities?
The back of the queue. I wish we were at the back of the queue. We're not even in the queue. We haven't even joined the queue. That's how far down I feel in priorities. If there was a queue, I'd be able to see it moving forward and think, okay, our day will come. There's nothing in the future for me. So therefore, no, I don't even think we're in the queue. And thanks for that question, Maura, and because it's really important I get to say we're not in the queue.
Another question here from Jackie Golden. She says, hi Denise, from your experience, what do you think organisations like the Alzheimer Society and the HSE could do to make sure that family carers are prioritised soon to ensure that they don't go under during the pandemic?
We need our loved ones taken care of. We need to have services for them. We need to have somewhere for them to go, or something that sees some service that actually sees them as an individual, that sees them. At the moment, I think my dad is invisible and I need someone to see him and to say, yes, we see what you're doing, we see your struggle. Let's take a little bit of that from you. And I don't think anybody is seeing that other than the Alzheimer Society yourselves. I don't see anybody else as seeing that. This is a big struggle for us.
Sure, lots of lovely and supportive messages coming in for you there, Denise, through our chat box. I'm sure everybody can see those coming in. Just a couple more questions for you here, Denise. I mean, we've heard about the impact of lockdown that it's had on you and your dad. Are you worried now about the long-term future without the kind of security blanket, if you like, that Rose Cottage would have offered you and your family in the past?
Yeah, I am worried. I don't know where we're going to go with this. You know, Pat Kenny asked me a couple of years ago on another thing I was doing, are you worried about the future? And I said, no, I'm just too busy living day to day. And for the first time in 8 years, I am terrified for the future because I get a glimpse of it and I don't like it. And it frightens me. To say I'm a granny, I shouldn't be frightened of what's down the road, but I am terrified for my dad and my family for what's down the road for us.
I mean, Denise, what's the one thing you'd like to tell all the elected representatives, all the politicians gathered here today? What's the one thing you would like them to take away from today?
6,500 people have been diagnosed with dementia since March. 6,500 families out there with nothing. We can't allow that to happen. There's too many people. We need to I want the leaders here today to hear us, to see us, these are our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. They've lived their lives. They deserve some comfort at this stage in their lives. They're vulnerable. They can't think clearly. They can't take on this fight. So we have to do it for them. But we're burnt out. We've enough other things going on. We're trying to go day to day to day. This shouldn't be my fight. You know, the government should be standing up and saying, we'll take this piece from you. You go off and do what you need to do on a day-to-day basis. We're going to get Rose Cottage open. We're going to get the services open.
Okay. Well, Denise, that's all the questions here. But I mean, if you look at the chat box, there's so many nice and supportive messages coming in for you today, Denise. So look, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing those words with us today, and thank you for your honesty. And we hope you and your dad look after yourself the next couple of months as we do head into autumn and winter. Just thanks very much for your time there, Denise. I'm going to hand back to Kevin now.
Thank you so much, Denise and Cormac. Denise, that was powerful. And for everyone listening here today, put yourselves in Denise's shoes. If it was someone you loved or cared for and you had the power or the position to do something about it, what would you do? Denise, that was powerful. And I think your dad will be very, very proud of you today. Well done. Our final speaker this morning is Professor Suzanne Cahill. Professor Cahill is at Trinity College, Dublin, and an honorary professor in dementia care at the Centre for Economic and Social Research in Dementia in NUI Galway. Now, a reminder again, you can put your questions for Suzanne in the chat box. So, good morning, Suzanne.
Hi, Kevin, and hello to everybody. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak about a topic very close to my heart. That is the dementia and the forgotten crisis. I'm going to spend a few minutes really addressing 4 different topics. The first is the scale of dementia in Ireland. This is probably just a reminder to many people. Then just adding to the wonderful presentation so far on the current realities of dementia in Ireland, the invisibility of dementia, and then future directions. So starting just with the, Lisa, maybe you could show that slide, please. Thanks. Thank you. So starting with the scale of dementia in Ireland, Denise quoted figures of 6,000 new cases of dementia since March, and we know that there's at least 10,000 new cases every year. We know that there's over 60,000 people who have dementia, so the prevalence rate is about 60,000. And about 3/4 of these people, or certainly more than 2/3, live in the community. And about 10,000 people are living alone with dementia. They're living completely with nobody to support them in their own homes. And then we also know that there's about 4,000 people who get this young onset dementia, which is a rare and unusual form of dementia that poses its own unique problems. And of course, behind all these figures, there are human faces, there are families, there are people struggling to make sense of the symptoms and to really live a good quality of life. So there are the facts and figures, just as a kind of resume. And then moving on to the current reality, and we've heard this clearly from other presentations this morning, but really without the support of family caregivers, many people with dementia who live at home would be living in nursing homes, costing the state really a fortune. Despite appeals being made to shift the balance of care away from nursing homes to home care services, there's still no legislative basis or act in place for home care services in Ireland. And in my view, there's an incongruence in government policy that claims to favour community care over long-term care, yet apportions a significantly larger amount of the health budget to long-term residential care services. We know too that obtaining home care services in normal times has been very much like a postcode lottery. And it's even more challenging, we know, during COVID times now. The government was to introduce a statutory home care scheme this year, but this, I understand, has been put on hold. It's imperative really that COVID does not derail these new initiatives. Just adding to that reality is the fact that dementia care, as we've heard from Denise and from others this morning, it's really hard physical and emotional work that, unlike other caring roles, the dementia care role extends around the clock. It's very different from other caring in that it's progressive, unpredictable, and it can continue for many years. And the carer will have to deal with not just personal care issues, but also coping with the behaviors that challenge, that can be quite irritating and embarrassing and can cause sleepless nights, like, you know, the repeated questioning and the agitation and the suspiciousness and other such behaviors. Numerous international studies have shown the adverse effects dementia care has on family carers' own health. In Ireland, the ASI's own work, like the de-stress study, has shown that 70% of spouse carers had at least 2 chronic health conditions, about 1/3 had clinical depression, and most in the month prior to their survey had had a visit with a health service professional for their own healthcare needs. Now, I should also stress that most Irish family members, most carers want to care, but they want support for the enormity of the work being undertaken. And so often caregiving, as we know, is both caring for and caring about. So often the government hones in on the caring about, like the warm, fluffy love and emotion of caring, and not on the caring for, which is the hard physical work that goes on behind closed doors. The current reality is also that we have a national dementia strategy about to expire with no plan in place for its renewal or for further ring-fenced funding to be allocated to dementia services. The strategy originally received philanthropic funding and HSE funding, and several of its work streams have been evaluated, showing value for money. And one example is the intensive home care package, which was dementia specific, that scheme. And the evaluation of that project showed that some people on the margins of community care and residential care with high dependency needs with dementia could be helped to live in the community for longer. Yet there's no government commitment to extending these type of services. In the last 2 years, dormant accounts have been used to deliver services like cognitive rehabilitation and cognitive stimulation therapy for a very small select group of people in Ireland with dementia. And I would question, why should our older people have to rely on dormant accounts for what in other countries constitutes basic services free for all? And we know that these dormant accounts won't be sustainable in the future. I just want to go on and talk for a minute or two about the invisibility of dementia. We've heard a little bit about this from Denise, but I just want to add to her comments. COVID, we know, has had a detrimental impact on the lives of many people with dementia. But curiously, their voice and that of their representatives has been silent in the overall debate on aged care services. Recently, I authored with Niamh Hennelly from Galway a national report on COVID and dementia. And in doing the research for that work, it was very difficult. It was really next to impossible to extract information about dementia from government sources like NEFIT or the Department of Health. So Alzheimer's disease tended not to be mentioned at all. And we looked at the minutes from the NEFIT meetings and the ministerial correspondence. Dementia didn't really feature at all. More recently, I've been involved in writing an international report, again on COVID and dementia. And it's very clear to me from this other work that in other European countries, dementia is listed as an underlying condition when it comes to COVID. So the point here is that we need to put in place better systems for collecting data on dementia in this country. And my suspicion is dementia is still a stigmatizing illness in this country. It's not being labeled. And until we have registers and until we start like naming the beast, as Terry Pratchett said, we won't be really able to advance far. We've heard a little about daycare, or a lot about daycare centres this morning. Daycare centres, in my view, can be the lifeline for many people with dementia and for their family carers. ASI, we know, provides services to over 1,000 people in the country through their daycare. They were first closed in March, during which time other HSE and ASI services also had to cease. If you think of services like Alzheimer Cafe and other services that into the home. The lockdown and the closure of these services has caused significant de-skilling, and I should add a decline in the health and well-being of the individual. Indeed, for some, it's a life not worth living. And if anybody listened to the Claire Byrne show yesterday morning, we heard again very eloquently the words of a carer and a person with dementia talking about this. Again, you know, Denise talked about us being not in the queue. In my view, it's scandalous that there are plans, or that the country has reopened pubs and golf clubs and restaurants and tennis clubs, and the reopening of fundamental services for people with a dementia has not really got onto the agenda at all yet. We know that daycare and contact with people is so important for the physical and the social well-being of people with dementia. Social isolation can lead to boredom, loneliness, depression, and at the extreme, the absence of a will to live. Or as that family carer commented on the radio yesterday, there are worse things than dying. So isolating people with dementia is really a health hazard. For the family caregiver, the ASI's own recent survey on caregiving and COVID showed that the closure of these services resulted in a deterioration in carers' mental health And we also need to think of some of the younger, like the daughter carers who are living with their parent who has dementia and trying to work from home whilst providing full-time care and maybe not having had a good night's sleep the night before. Many of these carers feel they're trapped, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. If they complain, it'll be perceived as they're being unloving. But the alternative, placing their loved one in a nursing home prematurely, is very likely going to really provoke feelings of guilt and fear. And the prospects of doing this are all the more harrowing now, given the mandate that all new admissions, including people with dementia to nursing homes, must go into isolation for 2 weeks. So I'm going to finish by just talking about future directions. What I believe, and again, this is being referred to by Denise very, very powerfully, we need strong political leadership in on the dementia stage. We need realistic investment in services. And the HSE in their own midterm review of the national strategy referred to this, the need for, ring-fenced funding for dementia. I'm also aware that many of the Alzheimer's Society services already in place have needed, even prior to COVID, further investment. So we need realistic investment and good services. There's also a need for government departments to follow through on several half-baked initiatives that when completed will have a positive impact on the lives of older people, including those with dementia. We've just recently finished a major report on young onset dementia, and we're great here in this country on commissioning reports and on writing them, but translating the findings into services is a much more difficult kind of task and not always as well kind of delivered on. Finally, the current debate on COVID-19 and older people needs to be broadened, in my view. It needs to include a much more comprehensive discussion of dementia, community services, and quality of life concerns. Isolating older people, especially those with dementia, is, as I said earlier, a huge health hazard. A starting point should be the setting up of an expert panel. We've had the expert panel on nursing homes, but we need an expert panel on home care services for older people with dementia. We cannot allow COVID to further derail better care for our citizens. So I'm going to finish on that, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. There's so much interest in what you have said this morning. Just one quick question, Suzanne. We know that the government will speak about COVID spending and budget restraints. They talk about budget restraints every year. What one thing should the government prioritise, do you think?
The one thing, in my view, is home care services. And we've heard that it's so urgent and so much needed.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, for your contribution. And to all the speakers today. We're coming to the end of this morning's pre-budget submission, and it's now my job to say goodbye. But really, it's not goodbye. I hope this is just the beginning. There's a number of people I must thank for this morning. Firstly, to all of our speakers, Eugene, Pat, Denise, Cormac, and Suzanne. You all shone a light on the urgent need that is out there and how this must be addressed. To the virtual backroom team of the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland to make this look all so easy, but I can tell you a huge amount of work has gone into it. In particular, I'd like to thank Avril Leaston for putting the event together and ensuring that we are all well prepared. Thank you to those who took time out of your day to attend today's launch. We really, really do appreciate your ongoing support. To the political representatives here, I really do urge you to take action to ensure people living with dementia and family carers are no longer living through a forgotten crisis. Now is the time to discover if we really are all in this together. It's time for action and not just kind words. And you know, there's no better time for action than today. Dementia affects 64 over 64,000 people in Ireland and their families. Just think about that, 64,000 people. We have a pandemic with dementia every year. Now I'm going to finish off with a video of some of those people, and after the video, the meeting will end. So I'll say, stay safe, take care, and goodbye.